The next speaker is Knesset member Tzipi Livni, the chairman of the Hatznua party and a senior member of the Zionist camp. I think for the past 20 years she's been playing on the political playing field and has had many different ministerial positions, twice Minister of Justice, Education, Agriculture, even Immigration and Absorption and Regional Development. And she tried a number of times to reach a settlement with the Palestinians. We talked about it this morning. I was involved in the Annapolis process, and I can say from up close that Tzipi was determined to reach a settlement, and she didn't view this process as just a process, but rather to create a two-state solution. And it's very interesting to hear today what she thinks the options that are available to us at this time. Member of Knesset, Tzipi Livni. Thank you, Udi. Good day to everyone. These are difficult times for the citizens of Israel. We are burying Israelis, wonderful people who grew up in this land, men, women, who so sadly their greatness and how they lived their lives is revealed to us only after they died, and the last for now, hopefully the last forever, Daphne Meir. And some say that we should not speak when we're burying our dead, and I say that alongside the shared grief that is shared by all Israeli citizens, for every Israeli who is killed by a terrorist, whether in Tel Aviv or in Otniel, we must see if there is a way to prevent the coming terror acts, to minimize the chances that Israelis will be injured by terror or harmed by terror. But it is not simple to talk in Israel of this time if you don't agree with the government. Israel has become a closed, isolated country that silences voices from within. But, ladies and gentlemen, I must say the truth, or at least my truth. The problems that Israel is currently facing, the international isolation, the attacks, the loss of personal security, and the internal conflict over the identity and essence of Israel and its democracy are closely related to one thing that we are trying today not to talk about, and they are related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, related to the fact that we allowed the conflict to manage us, that we did not take the initiative. We thought things would resolve themselves, and when you don't deal with a problem, then the world tries to get involved. Our security is damaged, and things reach a height and try to destroy all the values in the name of which and for which the State of Israel was established. I would like to make it clear that I am not going to sell a window of a solution around the corner. An agreement needs two sides, and yes, I do have criticism for the Palestinians and for losing an opportunity. But I would like today to talk about us, about our vision, what the conflict does to us, and what we need to do for ourselves. And to be more precise, not what the conflict does to us, but rather what the policy of the government in regard to the conflict does to us, because that policy needs to be changed. And what is absurd is that the more the conflict impacts our life here, the more we ignore it. It has become a non-issue in the State of Israel. In other words, there are still those who say that there are a few crazies that are still talking about the forbidden word peace, because the Arabs are the same Arabs and the sea is the same sea, and there's no partner and the world is against us and everybody's anti-Semitic, and it's better to make peace with nice Arabs because they want to, but without the Palestinians. And if we only had good public diplomacy, then there wouldn't be BDS in the world and everything would work itself out. To say nothing of the fact, if we would just use a little more force, if we would just annex another part of the territories, then we'd really show them and everything would be a hunky-dory. Not. But even if the Arabs are the same Arabs and the sea is the same sea, it is our responsibility what we're going to do between the Mediterranean and the Jordan, because we can't choose our neighbors. We have to contend with the reality that we have. I don't know if there is a partner for a final status agreement, but I only know that I cannot choose who will be on the other side. And on the other side, there are those with whom there is no hope for peace, and that is Hamas, and there is Abu Mazen, who at least supports the principle of two nation states and cooperates in security with Israel against the Hamas. It's clear that there will not be a regional peace without peace with the Palestinians, and I have no doubt that there is anti-Semitism in the world, but not the whole world. The whole world is not anti-Semitic, and of course we need to fight with force against terror, the Islamist religious terror, because you cannot reach an agreement with it. But leaving the conflict open as an ideology, as a principle, that means accepting terror and not fighting it. Those who say, let's move from solving the solution to managing the solution, fine. You want to manage the solution? Do it. But instead of managing the solution, it is the conflict that is managing us, and it is taking over everything. Because when you manage, you need a vision too, and you need goals. And you need targets. And it's true for every commercial company and certainly for the State of Israel. There should be leadership that wants to lead and not just manage. But if you are going to manage, then do it properly. And the real juncture that Israel is at is the juncture between the vision and the goal. And that's the real juncture. And when I talk about vision, forgive me, I don't get up in the morning and think about how to establish a Palestinian state. I get up in the morning and think about how to preserve and keep Israel a Jewish, democratic, safe country in the land of Israel, but not all the land of Israel. And that's what I mark out as my destination on the national ways. And if it's impossible to reach an agreement, if that road is obstructed and jammed, then we have to think about alternative routes, as long as we don't if we don't move our eye from the target. And the other option is one state between the Mediterranean and the Jordan. And that's what those people are putting on their political ways as a denomination. Some of the ministers of our government, and they just don't say so. Bennett is talking about political innovation. It's the same ideology of the whole land of Israel, the greater land of Israel, in high-tech lingo. And that's the truth that needs to be stated. Because whereas we are contending with a difficult reality, there are those who, under the guise of a security discourse, are gradually advancing that ideology. And then when the dust rests, we really do have dust in the air outside, when the dust settles, we'll end up with one state with an ongoing conflict, and what we're seeing now is just the promo. The coming soon, and they're silencing those who do not support the government in the name of patriotism. So in that case, Israel will not be democratic, and it won't be Jewish, because equality is a Jewish value, first of all, and not a favor that a Jewish state does for international democracy. And all that will happen not because we're told that's where we're going. All this will happen in the name of security, and you know what? I want to talk about security. First of all, I am proud to live in a state and to be the citizen of a state when the chief of staff of the IDF talks like a GDF, the way that the chief of staff spoke yesterday. He deserves that applause. It's not politics. And if we're talking about security, a state needs a border that it can defend. And Israel is a state without a border for dozens of years. And we need a border and not a state that is porous and enables ISIS to start connecting or set up nests of terror within it. And it is the IDF that is protecting the border of the state of Israel, and the IDF are the soldiers, the wonderful soldiers who are our children, but it's also our relationship with the U.S. And now their discussions are being held regarding the new relations between, strategic relations between Israel and the U.S., and I'm not talking about money. The entire security doctrine of the State of Israel is based on our relations with the U.S. Israel's deterrence is based on the fact that our enemies look at us and don't just see this small country, but see behind it the United States. And every military campaign starts and ends with phone calls to the states and what's happening with the emergency warehouses, and to make sure they don't stop us in the middle of a campaign with resolutions against us in the United Nations. Yes, diplomacy, and not only the suits and ties, the real, this is part of Israel's security. And the security doctrine of the State of Israel is not yet another isolated settlement and construction in Judea and Samaria. We need to make a clear distinction between the security doctrine of the State of Israel and the vision of the greater land of Israel. And those who wish to advance the latter wants to send more Israelis to live in isolated places and send more combat soldiers who are training for the next war that we may have to fight to do policing work on buses. When we're talking about innovative ideas, I talk about the discussion, I heard about the discussion about Gaza. So let's distinguish between security and settlements. I didn't hear Bennett, who's complaining about what's happening in Gaza. I didn't hear him suggesting to rebuild Gaza. And I will defend the right of every Israeli to live everywhere in safety and security. But I oppose a policy the goal of which is to build more and more until we reach the point of no return. And that is the difference, something that we can explain to the world, because good public diplomacy cannot cover up bad policy. And when the policy is right, we can harness the world for the interests of the State of Israel too. So what? Yes. When the goal is clear, when we understand that in order to keep Israel Jewish and democratic and safe, we need to move ahead in the direction of separation from the Palestinians, to set a border between us and them, call it separation, call it two states for two peoples. What's important is that we know where we're going, and the strategy needs to be dual, in parallel. Let the radical Islamists represent a radical Islamic philosophy, and they'll never accept Afir. And if we resolve our issue with the Palestinians, it won't change Hamas or Hezbollah. Or at least we'll remove from the table the use that they are making of the conflict in order to get more and more support. But at the same time, it is not enough only to use strength, force against the radicals. We have to see if there is hope to do something with those who don't represent the Islamistic religious aspect of the conflict, but rather its national aspect. Let's go back to what I prefer. In order to end a conflict, we need another side. We need an agreement that will set a border, and we need international recognition of that border that will be determined by the agreement. But Zionism never determined its processes only in consideration of what the other side will do. The State of Israel arose despite the opposition on the part of the Arabs. And I have to remind you that before the establishment of the State of Israel worked diplomatically to get the resolution of the United Nations that yes and no, that dealt not only with the establishment of a Jewish state, but that this land would be partitioned between two states. So if it is impossible to end the conflict tomorrow morning, we need to take initiative and take those steps that it will at least advance us in that direction. And all based on that distinction between Israel's security, between the legitimacy of what we can do, and between new construction in the settlements. And in order to preserve our interests, and in a settlement we need to preserve our interests and the settlement blocks and Jerusalem, and to do that we need to stop building beyond the fence. That construction does not give us security. It only creates more tension and exacerbates Israel's isolation. And then we'll be able to say to the world what I did when I was foreign minister of Israel, and not only then, that Israel will defend itself by itself and will do as much as necessary, and the IDF will remain in the same places it needs to remain as long as it needs to, but we are sincere in our desire for peace, and so we will not build in places that, according to our assessment too, will not be part of Israel in the future. And then, instead of saying that Tel Aviv and Yitzhar are exactly the same, we will safeguard those places that are really important to us. And then the world, I think, immediately, and I can promise you that, will not do what the EU did yesterday when it decided that Jerusalem and Yitzhar are the same. And I say this based on my experience. I have removed many programs from the table, including European ones, when I became convinced, and rightly so, that when I managed to convince them that we are serious in our intentions, that we are not trying to take over all the territory under the guise of night, and that we are interested in genuine negotiations, not for the sake of negotiations, but indeed to reach that fair settlement. And so those programs were removed one after the other, and the same is true when I was called by Netanyahu and Bennett, who was Minister of Economy at the time, to save the Horizon 2020 program before Israelis' research would be cut off from Europe. And that's what I did with 2 phone calls and 1 text message. In order to diminish terror and improve the atmosphere, some other steps need to be, and that is to allow more residential construction for Palestinians in Area C, and also improve the Palestinian economy, because that's also in Israel's interests, and we need to listen to what the Chief of Staff said yesterday. And when we do that, we will make it easier for the moderate Arab world, who indeed have to contend with the radicals. Will enable them to cooperate with us, because they will not need to contend with popular opinion there, which sadly still views Israel as the enemy. And then Israel public diplomacy will be based on policy, and then instead of BDS isolating us, we will isolate it. And the most important thing, we must be united not only against those who are against us, but in favor of a joint vision. And I would like to conclude and say that the saddest part of all this is that the Prime Minister of Israel knows exactly what needs to be done, but what needs to be done for the sake of Israel clashes with what needs to be done in order to preserve the coalition. And so the Prime Minister first wants to get before he gives, and I say that once and for all the time has come to think about ourselves, not what the Palestinians are getting, but what we want and how to get it. You know, Einstein has been quoted so many times, who said that insanity means doing the same thing again and again and expect a different result. And I say that the fact that the negotiations until now have not produced results doesn't mean that we have the right to give up. Leadership means, yes, the duty to try again and again in different ways, new ideas, but never to lose eye contact with the target. And we have to continue to advance this vision, although we're called nuts or leftists or traitors. And I don't plan to let my eye off the target, off the vision of a Jewish, democratic, just and safe state of Israel in the land of Israel, but not in all of it. Thank you.